one of the most streamed artists on the entire planet, a man with over 15 billion streams to his name, a presidential pardon in his pocket, and a wife and kids living the European dream. Just got taken down by a SWAT team. Not a regular arrest, not a traffic stop, a full-blown federal raid with agents stacked outside his door ready for whatever came next. The feds don't pull up with SWAT unless they think they're going into a war zone. And when it comes to Kentrell Gaulden, the man the world knows as NBA Youngboy, they clearly weren't taking any chances. The real question isn't just what happened during that raid. The real question is, how did we get here? Because less than a year ago, this man was walking the streets of Paris with his wife and his kids, completely unbothered, living a life that most of us only see in movies. He had just gotten a pardon from the President of the United States. He had just wrapped a massive comeback tour. He was separating himself from everything that had been dragging him down for years. And then, SWAT. We're about to break down everything. The Europe chapter, the Rolling Loud cancellation, the federal case that never fully went away, the people in his circle who keep pulling him back into the fire. And why? Even after everything, the feds came knocking one more time. Stay with us because this story goes way deeper than a headline. Before we get into what went down, we need to go back and understand who Kentrell Gaulden really is. Because the media only tells you half the story. They show you the mugshots, they show you the courtroom footage. What they don't show you is the full picture. A young man from Baton Rouge who grew up with almost nothing, who was writing raps in a juvenile detention center before most kids even know what direction they want their life to go. By the time Youngboy was in his early 20s, he had already been arrested multiple times, survived multiple shootings, lost close friends to the streets, and somehow still managed to become one of the most streamed artists in the history of music. Not just rap, music, period. We're talking billions of streams, consistent chart-topping projects, and a fan base so loyal they don't care what the mainstream press says about him. That loyalty, that's earned, that's real. But here's the thing that people always miss when they talk about Youngboy. His legal situation has never been just about him making bad decisions in the moment. This is a man who has been in the federal government's crosshairs since 2020, when a music video shoot in Baton Rouge turned into a full-scale raid that led to 16 people getting arrested, including him. From that point forward, the feds had a file with his name on it. And that file, it never closed. Now hold up. Before y'all start thinking this is just another story about a rapper who couldn't stay out of trouble, understand the complexity of what's actually happening here. Because what we're watching unfold with NBA Youngboy is not just about one man's mistakes. It's about the system, the streets, the people around you, and how hard it is to outrun both your past and the people who want to keep you in a box. So let's get into it. July 11th, 2025. Photos started circulating on social media and everybody went crazy. There was NBA Youngboy, Kentrell Deshaun Gaulden from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, standing at the Eiffel Tower in Paris, France, with his wife Jaslyn Michelle, with their kids, just living. No entourage of 60 people, no security cameras flashing every 2 seconds, no fans rushing the scene, just a man, his family, and the most iconic structure in the entire world in the background. And fam, that image hit different, because anyone who actually follows Youngboy's story understands what that moment represented. This wasn't a flex. This wasn't content for clout. This was a man who had spent years fighting the government, fighting legal cases, fighting the conditions of house arrest that literally kept him inside 4 walls, finally breathing free air somewhere nobody knows his name. See, that's the part that doesn't get talked about enough. In Baton Rouge, Youngboy can't walk to a gas station without it becoming a whole event. In Utah, where he relocated his family, the feds were literally monitoring his every move as part of his supervised release conditions. But in Paris, in Europe generally, nobody's running up on Kentrell Gaulden asking for a selfie. Nobody's pulling out their phones to post, "I just saw NBA Youngboy." Over there, he's just a young father with his wife and his children, eating good food, walking through museums, seeing parts of the world that Baton Rouge never offered him. Now, he and Jaslyn Michelle have been married since January 2023. She's not just a background character in his story. She's a beauty and lifestyle content creator in her own right, with her own following, her own YouTube channel, her own identity. And the fact that she rode through all of his legal battles, the prison sentence, the house arrest, the federal cases, says a lot about what that relationship actually is. In Europe, they finally got to just be a couple, just be parents, just be people. And it goes even deeper than that, because this wasn't some random decision to hop on a plane and take a vacation. Youngboy had been vocal about wanting to get to Europe for years. Back in late 2022, before the Utah arrest, before the federal prison sentence, he posted on his Instagram story that he wanted to move to Europe with his family. Once all his legal issues were behind him, he said he was going to stay prayed up, stack his money, and get out. That post didn't get a lot of attention at the time, but looking back, that was a blueprint. That was a man telling you exactly what he was trying to build toward. And by the summer of 2025, after the pardon, after the early prison release, after the comeback tour, he was finally doing it. Taking his wife and his kids to Paris, letting his children see the world, existing as a human being rather than a target. The Europe trip wasn't just a vacation. It was proof of concept, proof that the life he said he wanted was actually possible. But here's where it gets real. Because that peaceful picture in Paris came right after one of the most talked about decisions of his entire career. May 7th, 2026. Just days before one of the biggest festival performances of his post-prison career was supposed to happen, Youngboy went on his Instagram stories and dropped a message that had the entire culture talking. He wrote, "To my Rolling Loud family, I won't be making it this time. I just need some time away from traveling and performing right now. Love to everybody supporting me. I'll forever appreciate y'all." That's it. No explanation, no drama. Just a goodbye. And within minutes, Rolling Loud replaced him with Ken Carson as the Sunday night headliner. Now on the surface, people took it different ways. Some fans were furious. They bought tickets specifically to see YB. Some people were confused. And some reports started leaking from industry insiders saying that negotiations had broken down over a massive financial disagreement between Youngboy's camp and Rolling Loud. We're talking numbers significant enough that people close to the situation described the gap as shocking even by festival economic standards. So on one level, this could have just been a money dispute that didn't get resolved. But real talk, you have to read between the lines here. A Rolling Loud headlining slot was not just another gig. This was Youngboy's first real shot at a major mainstream festival stage in years. The Massa Tour in the fall of 2025 was a massive comeback, but that was his crowd, his environment, his controlled situation. Rolling Loud, that's 30,000 people of every background. That's cameras everywhere. That's a spotlight that comes with all kinds of attention, including the kind of attention a man on federal supervised release doesn't need. Because even after the Trump pardon wiped his federal conviction in May 2025, Youngboy was still under 5 years of supervised release, probation conditions, which means people are still watching, which means one wrong move, one incident in the crowd, one situation with the wrong person backstage, and everything he rebuilt could come crashing back down. Sometimes the smartest move is to not put yourself in a position to begin with, and canceling Rolling Loud, getting on a plane and going back to Europe with his family, that might have been exactly that. The streets have been noticing for a while that Youngboy was moving differently, quieter, more calculated, less reactive. The man who used to put everything on blast, every beef, every emotion, every situation, had started pulling all the way back. And that pullback had a lot to do with one thing he'd been working on for a long time, separating himself from the people around him who were still living in the same patterns that had put him in the government's sights in the first place. Now, this is where we got to address something that most people don't want to talk about honestly, the circle. Because one of the biggest parts of Youngboy's ongoing story, one that the media glosses over because it's complicated, is the question of who's around him and what those people are actually doing. Because the FBI didn't just wake up one day and decide to target Kentrell Gaulden for no reason. In their official court affidavit tied to the 2024 Utah arrest, federal agents formally identified Gaulden as the leader of the NBA Street Gang, a Baton Rouge-based organization that shares the same name as his rap moniker. That's not a rumor. That's documented. That's in the federal record. Now let me break down for y'all what that actually means in terms of how the government approaches someone like Youngboy. Because when the feds label you as the leader of a criminal organization, they're not just watching you. They're watching everyone connected to you. Your homies, your cousins, your business associates, people who go to your shows, people who ride in your cars. Every single person in your orbit becomes a potential thread that investigators can pull on to build a bigger case. We saw exactly how this plays out back in January 2022, when a SWAT team raided the Texas home where Youngboy's mother lived. 3 of his associates, Carleon Gallion, Roy Mello Williams, and Darrell Brown, were arrested on charges ranging from aggravated robbery to aggravated assault. Law enforcement recovered AR-15s, pistols, and long guns from that location. Youngboy wasn't even there. He wasn't charged in that incident, but his name was attached to that address. Those people were attached to him, and that connection gets added to the file that never closes. And then in 2024, the prescription fraud ring situation. Authorities allege that associates were physically going into pharmacies across Utah, multiple cities, multiple pharmacies, using fraudulent identities to obtain codeine-based prescriptions. Youngboy pleaded guilty to his role in that scheme, but the broader network of people involved around him was substantial. These weren't strangers. These were people from his circle who were moving under the shelter of his name and his resources. That right there is the thing that most people who love Youngboy's music don't fully want to face. Because it's not comfortable. It's easy to just say the government is out to get him. And honestly, there's some truth to that. The system has absolutely targeted him in ways that reflect deeper structural issues. But it's also true that some of the people closest to him have made choices that repeatedly brought federal heat back to his door, even when he was trying to walk away from all of it. And Youngboy has been doing the work to distance himself. The relocation to Utah, moving his family out of Baton Rouge, the Europe trips, spending time with Jaslyn and the kids in places where nobody knows the NBA game, nobody knows the Baton Rouge streets, nobody has any reason to drag him into anything. That's intentional. That's a man trying to build a moat between himself and the environment that keeps producing these situations. But here's the real kicker though. A moat doesn't mean anything if the people who cause problems can still reach you. If your name is still on leases, on accounts, on affiliations that your associates are using to conduct themselves in ways that bring the feds back around, it doesn't matter how far you flew. The case can still find you when you land. Let's talk about the federal shadow that never fully lifted, because this is the part of the story that connects everything. Here's the timeline that you need to understand. In 2020, the Baton Rouge music video raid puts him in the federal government's sights. In 2021, a federal grand jury indicts him for gun possession. For years, he's on house arrest across multiple jurisdictions, fighting overlapping cases. In April 2024, the Utah SWAT raid brings 63 state charges tied to the prescription fraud ring, and a federal judge in Louisiana signs an order to take him into federal custody. On top of that, he pleads guilty in November 2024 to identity fraud, forgery, and related charges.
NBA Youngboy now faces nearly 2 years in prison on federal gun charges.
Pleads guilty in December 2024 to the federal gun possession charge and gets a 23-month sentence. Gets released early in March 2025 after serving about 11 months. And then, in May 2025, President Donald Trump pardons him, clears his federal conviction. Alongside Larry Hoover and the Chrisley family and former politicians, Kentrell Gaulden gets a presidential pardon. Youngboy put out a statement thanking Trump, thanking pardon czar Alice Marie Johnson, and thanking his attorney. He said the pardon opens the door to a future I've worked hard for, and he meant that. You could feel it in how he moved afterward. The Massa Tour, Paris. The new baby announced in February 2026. This was a man who believed he had finally gotten his clean slate. But here is what you need to understand about the federal government. A pardon clears a conviction. It does not erase the intelligence infrastructure that was built around you during years of investigation. It does not shut down the task forces. It does not close the gang file. It does not undocument the associations, the relationships, the patterns of activity that agents spent years cataloging. The FBI does not defund itself because a rapper got pardoned. Especially not when that rapper has been formally classified as the leader of an active criminal organization whose other members are still out here operating. For y'all who might not understand how RICO works, let me explain. The Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act allows federal prosecutors to charge an entire organization rather than just individuals. You don't have to personally commit every crime to catch a RICO charge. You just have to be connected to an organization where crimes are being committed, and prosecutors have to be able to argue you played a leadership role in that organization. The feds use RICO to dismantle the Italian mob. They've used it against drug cartels, street gangs, and increasingly against rap crews and music industry networks. And when the FBI has already documented in an official affidavit that they consider you the leader of a named gang, that foundation for a RICO case doesn't evaporate because you got a pardon. That's why the SWAT situation hits different when you understand the full context. Because this isn't just about one incident. This is about a government apparatus that has been building around Youngboy's name for years, watching his associates, watching the organization, waiting. And when the right moment came, when someone in that circle made the wrong move, the whole weight of that apparatus came down with SWAT. Because the last time they went to arrest someone connected to Youngboy, DJ Academic said it publicly. The feds felt they needed that level of force because of the firepower that had historically been present in his environment. These agents weren't taking chances. At the end of the day, the story of NBA Youngboy in this SWAT raid is not just about one man in one moment. This is a story about how hard it is to outrun your past when the system is designed to make sure you can't fully escape it. And when the people around you haven't gotten the memo that you're trying to, think about everything this man has survived just to get to the point where he could stand at the Eiffel Tower with his family, writing lyrics in the juvenile detention center as a teenager, growing up in Baton Rouge with almost nothing, building one of the most remarkable music careers of his generation, not with radio play, not with major label machinery, not with mainstream media approval, but with pure, unfiltered connection to his audience. 15 billion streams, 16 million monthly listeners on Spotify. The numbers don't lie. And he did all of that while spending years under house arrest, fighting federal charges across multiple states, watching associates go down around him, losing people he loved, being put under the kind of legal and financial pressure that would destroy most people. He survived that. He kept making music through that. He got pardoned by the most powerful man in the country. He did a sold-out comeback tour. He started a family. He moved towards something better. But the SWAT raid reminded everybody, including Youngboy, that freedom is fragile when your past is still following you, when the people around you are still living in it. When the government has spent years building a case architecture around your name that a pardon can't fully take apart. He was at the Eiffel Tower. He was in Paris with his wife and his kids, just living the dream he talked about years ago when he was still locked inside four walls of a Utah house, fighting case after case, praying for a way out. He got that moment, and then the SWAT team came and interrupted it. That's the reality of being NBA Youngboy.
Rapper NBA Youngboy, the 24-year-old whose real name is Kentrell Gaulden, is facing dozens of charges accusing him of being involved in a large-scale prescription drug fraud ring.
That's the reality of being Kentrell Gaulden from Baton Rouge. A man with more raw talent than almost anyone in his generation, more work ethic than most people could ever imagine, and more obstacles stacked against him than any of us will ever fully understand. The question now is whether he can finally find a way to close that chapter for real, to put enough distance between himself and everything that keeps pulling him back, or whether the cycle just keeps going. What are your thoughts on where Youngboy goes from here? Has he done enough to separate himself from the people and situations that keep bringing the feds back around? Or is the system always going to find a way to keep him locked in? Drop it in the comments and tap the video on screen for more breakdowns just like this one.